All right, now we're looking at page 9 in your traditions book on trumpet. We're starting with number 22, Little Robin Redbreast. And over this, it shows you in brackets first phrase and second phrase. A phrase is just simply a musical sentence or thought. There are often 4 measures, sometimes there are 8 measures, they can be longer, but it's a group of notes that are played together as one group, not just separate notes. So we would go all the way to the rest as one thought or sentence. So let's look at number 22. And for right now, the solely, we're going to ignore that for just a moment. We'll come back to that. So let's look at 22 and let's hiss and finger. Ready? Just hissing and fingering. The notes we have here are C, then D, then E, then F, and in the last 4 measures, G, F, E, D, and C. So let's hiss and finger. On D, when we press first and third valve, we push this third valve ring out to make the horn a little bit longer to get that note down to where it's supposed to be. So the fingering for D is 1, 3, and out. So let's hiss and finger. Ready? Now. Rest, rest. Okay, so this time I'm going to start the metronome. We're going to say the note names as we go through it while the metronome keeps the beat for us. Here we go. 1, 2, say and finger. C, 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 C. D, that third valve out. E, 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 F, 2, half rest. G, 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 F, 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 E, E, D, D, C, hold for 4 counts, off. All right, now let's play that together. Ready? Here we go. 1, 1, 2, here we go. All right, now the words above that where it says solo and then tutti, solo means that one person plays by themselves. And tutti tells us that everyone plays together. So in class we will do that where we'll take some solos or we'll do a soli. And a soli is where a group of people play, or like just clarinets or just flutes. We would call that a soli. So that's number 22. Okay, now we're looking at line 23. So the first thing we want to do is look at the rhythm in line 23. This is a little bit more complicated, so we're going to do this in 2 halves. So while we're practicing, if we break things up into smaller groups, it makes it a lot easier to learn. So we're going to look at just the first 4 measures of this for right this second. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hiss the rhythm. So we're starting this hiss with our tongue. I'm not breathing for everyone. I'm blowing all the way through and just breaking it with the tip of my tongue. My tongue is touching just behind my back, my top teeth, just behind them on the back. So I'm going to start the metronome, and we're going to hiss and hiss the first 4 measures of 23. 1, 2, hiss, now. Rest. All right, so now that we've hissed it, let's finger it and say the note names. So the first note we have here is on the first line of the staff, and that's our E. The second note we have is one space below the staff, and that's D, first and third with the third vowel slide out. Then the next note is one ledger line below the staff, and that's C. Open, then back to our D. And since we're going right back from D to C, we don't have to bring that slide back in. We only have to worry about it if we use second and third vowel together. So you can leave it out for the C. The second measure, we have E's, first line. Then the third measure, we have D's, just below the staff, 1 and 3 with the third vowel out. Then the fourth measure, the first note is an E on the first line, then a G on the second line, which is open, then another G, which is open. Then we have a quarter rest that gets one beat of silence. We remember the names of the lines by saying every good boy does fine, and the spaces by saying face. We're going from the bottom to the top, up the 5 lines and spaces. Once we know those lines and spaces, we can figure out the others going below the staff because they go in alphabetical order. So let's say and finger that together in rhythm now. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, first 4, now. E, D, C, D. E, 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 hold. D, 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 hold. E, G, G, rest. Okay, this time I'm going to play it. I want you to say the note names and finger with me. Just 4 measures. 2, ready, now. All right, now do that with me. We're going to play those first 4 measures together. Here we go. 1, 2, breathe deep. All right, notice I'm not stopping the notes. I'm not playing. I'm blowing one long stream of air. I'm starting the note just by touching the back of my teeth with my tongue. So now let's look at the last 4 measures of 23. Let's finger and say the note names. The rhythm is pretty much the same as what we did before. So let's just finger and say the note names. Ready? This is measure 5. We have E, then D below the staff, then C on the ledger line, then D below the staff, then E, 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 E. The next measure is D, D, E, D, and C. So finger and say that with me. Ready? Finger the note names, finger the notes on your instruments, and say the names out loud. The last 4 measures of 23. 2, here we go. E, D, C, D. E, 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 E. D, D, E, D, C, hold, rest, rest. And we know that's a half rest because it sits on top of the middle line, like a hat sits on top of your head. If it's under the line, then it's like a hole in the road and it's a whole rest. But this is a half rest. So now this time we're going to sizzle and finger the notes all the way through, number 23. Ready? Sizzling and fingering all the way through. 1, 2, sizzle finger now. Rest. Rest, rest. Notice I'm taking a really big breath. I'm filling up all the way to the bottom so I have enough air to get through it. Now, when we get to the very end of this line, there's 2 dots there. Those dots are called a repeat sign. That repeat sign tells us to go back to the beginning when we get to that end. We're not going to do that for right now, just for the sake of time on the video. where we're only going to go through it once. We'll work on the repeating class. So let's play that together now. Number 23, all the way through. Horns are up. Go ahead and set your mouthpiece. 1, 2, here we go now. Rest, rest. All right, very good. Okay, now we're looking at line 24, Itsy Bitsy Spider. This is a round, and we'll do the round in class. And what a round is when two different groups start at different times, or many different groups start at different times, and we're playing the same stuff, but we're playing it at a different point in the music so it lines up above itself. And we'll work on that in class, and it'll be a lot more easily understood. So let's look at Itsy Bitsy Spider. We're going to do this just like we did number 23. We're going to break this up into 4 measures. So the first thing we're going to do is sizzle that rhythm. So let's sizzle the rhythm for the first 4 measures. Here we go. Sizzling. 1, 2, sizzle tongue. Rest. Rest, rest. And we know that's a half rest because it sits on top of the middle line, and it sits on top of the line like a hat sits on top of your head. Hat and half sound sort of alike. Makes it easy to remember. So now let's look at the notes for the first 4 measures. Our first note is on the first ledger line under the staff. We know that the staff is every good boy does fine on the 5 lines. So that means the bottom line would be E, every. And if we go down to the space below that, that would be D because it comes before E. And then that ledger line is just below D, so that's C because C comes before D in the alphabet. So in that first measure, we have C, which is open, C, C. The 4th note is on the space, is a D, first and third with the 3rd vowel slide out. And the second measure is an E on the first line, then a quarter rest, 1 beat, then another E, then another E. In the third measure, we go back to 1 space below the staff, D, then C on the ledger line below, then D, then E, then C, which is a half note getting 2 beats, and then a half rest. So I'm going to play it this time, just those 4 measures. I want you to say the note names out loud and finger along with me. Here we go. First 4 measures of number 24. 2, here we go, now. All right, now this time you play with me, just the first 4 measures. Ready? Horns are up. Mouthpiece set on your lips. 1, 2, here we go. Rest, rest. All right, so now let's look at the last 4 measures, starting at the circle 2. So let's just hiss and finger this. So first thing we want to look at is the notes. So let's look at the notes in the 5th measure. We have E, first line, E, E, and then F on the first space. We know the spaces spell out face, F-A-C-E from the bottom up. The next measure, the first note is G on the second line. Then we have a quarter rest. Then we have 2 more G's. Everything's open. Then the next to last measure, we have an F on the first space, an E on the first line, then another F on the first space, then a G on the second line, and then we drop down to C on the first ledger line. And those notes are fingered the same, G and C. G is higher, and C is lower. E, O, will help get that to go down. So I'm going to play this. So we're going to sizzle and finger this. Ready? Sizzle and finger starting at circle 2. 2, sizzle finger now. Rest. Rest, rest. Now, you finger and say the note names while I play. 1, 2, circle 2, now. You hear that note go down from G down to C. All right, so now we've gone all the way through 24. So let's play it together. So I'll start the metronome. We're going to play together. I have my metronome set at 80, which is just a nice speed to work on this for now. So let's go all the way through number 24. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, play. Rest, rest. Rest, rest. And you'll notice at the end there's a repeat sign that tells you to go back to the beginning and play it again. But just for the sake of time, we're not going to do that now. All right, now we're going to look at number 25, a la Rueda. If you notice over the notes, it has soli, tutti, soli, tutti. And then it tells us what to do for the solis. Woodwinds, one time, brass percussion the other. We can do whatever we want. We can play with that. We can mix instruments, and we'll do that some in class. But for now, we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to learn the notes and play it. So we're going to look at this in 4 measures. So we're going to do the first 4 measures. First, we're going to say the note names and finger them. So let's look at the first measure of 25. That first note's on the bottom line, which is E, first and second. So we have E, 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 and then first space, which is F, face. In the second measure, we have G on the second line, and then it goes down to D on the first space below the staff, and our third vowel slide goes out. Then the third measure, we have G, which is open. We have to go from low to high. G, then F on the first space, then D on the space below the staff, then an E half note on the first line, then a C half note on the first ledger line below the staff. So let's hiss and finger that now. Just the 4 measures. Ready? Hissing and fingering. 1, 2, hiss, finger now. And stop. All right, so now I'm going to play it. And while I play these 4 measures, I want you to say the note names out loud and finger. Here we go. You say and finger while I play the first 4. Here we go. 1, 2, here we go. Now. All right, now you play that with me. Just 4 measures. Horns are up, mouthpiece set. 1, 2, here we go. All right, now we've got the first 4 measures. Let's look at the second 4 measures. The second 4 measures start where it says soli, brass percussion. So the 5th measure and the 6th measure are exactly like the first 2. So we don't need to worry about getting the fingerings on that. We should already have them. In the last 2 measures, let's look at the last 2 where it says tutti. The first note there is on the second line, that's G. Then the next note is on the first space, F. Then the third note is on the first line, E. The 4th note is on the first space below the staff, D. We have to extend the third vowel slide. And the last note is a whole note, C, on the first ledger line. So let's say those note names and finger the measures 5, 6, 7, and 8. Ready? Say the note names with me. Here we go. Say E, 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 F, G, hold, D, hold. G, F, E, D, C, hold for 4 counts, off. Now let's sizzle finger that. Ready? Sizzle and finger the notes. This is 5, 6, 7, and 8. Ready? Now. All right, now we're going to play those last 4 measures together. Ready? 1, 2, last 4. Okay, now we're going to go all the way through all of Rueda, playing with me. So I'm going to start the metronome, so go and get your mouthpieces set. 2, here we go now. All right, so that's number 25. Okay, now we're looking at number 26, Love Somebody Duet. A duet is when we have 2 different parts going on at the same time playing together. So we have a part A and a part B. The first thing we're going to look at is part A. If we look at the first measure of part A, we have 4 notes. The first note is on the ledger line below the staff, and that's C. And then the next note is on the first line of the staff, E. The next note is on the second line of the staff, G, and then we have another G. So we have C, E, G, G. Now, that's also the 3rd measure, and that's also the 5th measure. The notes are all the same. So let's hiss and finger those first 4 measures. Ready? Hissing and fingering the first 4 measures. 1, 2, hiss and finger. Now. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now notice that whole rest is hanging underneath the 4th line. Like it looks like there's a hole in the line. If you're going down the road and you saw that hole, then you would know that that's a hole. So that's a whole rest when it hangs beneath the line, like a hole in the road. So we're going to play these first 4 measures together. We have C, which is lower, then E, and then G. So here we go. We're going to play the first 4 measures together. 1, 2, here we go now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rest, 2, 3, 4. All right, good. So now let's look at the last 4 measures. The 5th measure is the same as the first ones we already did. So it was C, E, G, G. Then the 6th measure, we have D just below the staff with the 3rd valve slide out, 1 and 3. Then E on the first line, then F on the first space. Then the 7th measure, E on the first line, then another E, then D on the first space below the staff, then another D. And the last measure is 3 C's on the first ledger line below the staff, and that's open. So let's say and finger those notes together now. The last 4 measures. Ready? Let's say it together. C, E, G, G, D, 3rd valve slide out, E, F, hold. E, E, D, D, C, 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 hold. Now, sizzle finger with me. Ready? Last 4 measures. Sizzle finger. 1, 2, sizzle finger. Now. Now notice while I'm sizzling and fingering, I'm keeping the horn just away from my lips, holding it just like I would play it. I'm not keeping it down low, because when we hold the horn correctly and sizzle finger and say the note names and finger, we're developing muscle memory. And if we're doing it the same as we're playing, all we're doing is easing the mouthpiece back. It makes it easier to learn. So we're going to continue to do that. So I'm going to play these last four measures of 26A. I want you to say the note names and finger. Here we go. 1, 2, say and finger, and. All right, now let's play that together all the way through letter A. Horns are up. 2, here we go. Rest for 4 count. Rest for 4 count. And once again, for the sake of time, we're not going to repeat. We're now looking at number 26, Love Somebody Duet, and we're looking at part B, the lower part. The lower part is done in a light yellow in your book to help you distinguish between the two, that it's a separate part. The first measure is a whole rest. The rest is hanging underneath the fourth line like a hole in the road. That gets 4 beats of silence. Then the next measure, finger with me, we have a D below the staff, then an E on the first line, then an F on the first space. Then we have another whole rest. Then we have an F on the first space, E on the first line, and D on the first space below the staff. So let's sizzle finger those first 4 measures. Ready? Here we go. Sizzling and fingering. 1, 2, sizzle finger. Now, whole rest, get 4 counts. Whole rest, get 4 counts. Off. Okay. Now, let's play that together. Here we go. And 1, 2, ready, now. Whole rest, get 4 count. Whole rest, get 4 count. All right. Now we're ready for the last 4 measures. So let's say the note names and finger here. This is measure 5. We have a C, one line below the staff, then another C. Then we have E on the first line and another E. In the next measure, we have a D, 1 space below the staff, third valve slide out, then E on the first line, then D on the first space below the staff. The 7th measure, we have 2 C's on ledger lines, the first ledger line below. Then we have 2 D's, the first space below the staff. And the last measure, we have 3 C's on the first ledger line fingered open. So let's sizzle and finger those last 4 measures. Ready? Here we go. Sizzling and fingering. 1, 2, sizzle finger, last 4. All right, so let's play those last 4 measures. Ready? Mouthpiece set. 1, 2, last 4, play. All right, so now let's play all the way through letter B. Horns are up. 1, 2, here we go. Rest for 4 beats. Rest for 4 beats. All right, and it has a repeat. You can repeat it. Now, while you're practicing, you can play letter A while I'm playing letter B, and it creates a duet at home. And you can play letter B while I'm playing letter A, so you can practice that duet. Okay, now we're going to look at number 27, Good King Wenceslas. Now, this would be a test line, and it may or may not be depending on what year we're in and what we're doing at the time. It has solos and solis and tutis all above the lines. While we're doing that right now, we're not going to bother with that. That's something that we'll do in class. But we want to look at this very closely, and if we examine it before we start, we'll notice that the first 4 measures and the second 4 measures are exactly the same. And music's a lot of music's like that. It's repetitive. So when we're practicing, we can break things up into small parts, and then we'll notice when we practice these small parts, those parts tend to repeat themselves later in the piece. And well, we don't have to just play from one end to the other. It's better to practice just the little small bites. It's like if you went to McDonald's and got a hamburger, you wouldn't put the whole thing in your mouth at one time. We take bites, and we eat that bite, and then we go to the next bite. Well, we do music the same way. We practice little bites, and once we get that bite taken care of, then we go to the next bite. It just makes it easier. So we're going to look at this in 2-measure bites, since we only have 4 measures. So we're going to break this up into 2-measure bites. So that first measure, let's look at the notes. The first 3 notes are on the first space, and those are called Fs, first valve. The 4th note is a G on the second line, that's open. The second measure, we have 2 Fs on the first space, and then we have a C on the first ledger line below the staff, which is open. So let's sizzle finger those 2 measures. Ready? Here we go. Sizzle finger, get the horn up. 1, 2, sizzle finger now. Off. All right. So let's say and finger that together in rhythm, saying the note names out loud and fingering the notes. Ready? Here we go. Now, F, 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 G, F, F, C. All right, this time you play along with me. Here we go. 2, ready, and. Notice I go down from the F to the C. So it's a lower, as the notes go lower on the staff, the sound gets lower. All right, now let's look at the 3rd and 4th measure. So let's figure out the notes. Here we have, first note is a D on the space below the staff, then a C on the first ledger line below the staff, then a D on the first space below the staff, then an E on the first line, and the next measure we have an F on the first space, followed by a quarter rest, and then another F on the first space, followed by another quarter rest. So let's say those note names and finger for the 3rd and 4th measure. Ready? Remember the D, the 3rd valve slide is out. So we have D, C, D, E, F, rest, F, rest. All right, let's sizzle finger that. Here we go. Sizzle finger, ready, 2, go, now. Rest, rest. All right, now notice I'm not going on the quarter note followed by the rest. Because that quarter note has to get a whole beat of sound. So it starts on 1 and it ends at 2. The next one starts on 3 and it ends at 4. So we have, it's not short. So now we're going to sizzle finger, we're going to play the 3rd and 4th measure. Ready? Let's play the 3rd and 4th measure together. 1, 2, 3rd and 4th, now. Notice I'm releasing that quarter note just as the click starts for the next beat. Now we're going to sizzle finger those 4 measures. The first 4 measures. Ready? Sizzle finger. 2. Here we go. Now, I always say the fingering for F is first valve, the fingering for E is first and second valve, the fingering for D is first valve, third valve, and the slide out. It's not correct unless that slides out. So we always make sure when we play D that this slide right here gets extended. That lowers the pitch where it sounds correct. So now we're going to play those first four measures together. So let's get our horns up, mouthpiece is set. Here we go. 1, 2, first four bars. Now, the last four measures is exactly like the first four. So let's play that together. We're not going to do the repeat, but we're going to play all 8 measures together. Let's get our horns up, ready to play. Here we go. 1, 2, beginning, and. All right, so that gets us through number 27.